Hey everyone, it's Patrick from Oakland Travel, and welcome to a cruise excursion from the Ovation to the Seas in August of 2019. We are in Victoria, British Columbia in Canada. This is our foreign port stop for our Alaska cruise out of Seattle, Washington. And so here we are on one of these little tiny taxis that take you in Victoria, British Columbia from like the area where the downtown is over to kind of the cruise terminal-ish area. I think we got picked up in the Wharf on this little taxi, and then they're going to take us over to a spot where we can essentially walk up a hill and go into Chinatown, and that will start the sort of the walking portion, or the main walking portion of this BC Bites and Sights tour in Victoria, British Columbia. This is Ovation to the Seas, docked there for a 7-night cruise. This was August of 2019.
I'm seeing right now. So that's the water runway that the float planes go up and down. We're not whales. So that water runway is the only one in the world that's ever been shut down because there was a whale on it. It's happened 3 times. Wow. Yeah. So as we go around the point, we're going to be looking at the downtown area. Now there was a time when that downtown area was all mud flats. And all the people living around the mud flats used to just pitch the garbage out the window. So it became a stinking, festering mass of ill health. So in 1901, the city of Victoria decided to change that. They brought 300,000 tons of clean fill and deposited it in that area, reclaimed the land. And so in 1866, Victoria became the capital of British Columbia. Now also you can see in between these 2 ferries, there's a square white building that looks a little bit like the Parthenon in Greece. That's steamship terminal. So there was a time when all of the cruise ships came in, docked there, everybody got off and went to the Empress Hotel on holiday. But when cruising got popular, you know, you're on one of the largest cruise ships in the world, and more people were coming. Sometimes we have 3 cruise ships a day. It just got to be too much activity for this inner harbor. So they built specifically the place where you're docked at the moment. It's called Ogden Point. So there's a lot of people who rely on cycling exclusively as their main means of transportation. That's how some people are coping with the high cost of living here. And we also have started to make some improvements for cyclists. So we've got about 38 miles of cycling paths in the greater Victoria area, and you'll see some when we're in the city today when we're having a walk around. So coming into the stop, we're going to stop here, and then we're going to get off and we're going to walk into Chinatown, which is just up the hill. When we come in and stop, it's a good place to take a photo of the little water taxi that we're in if you want. And again, I'm happy to take your photo in front of you if that's what you'd like.
What kind of ideas now Chinatown stop?
A little bit of a climb.
Wow.
So between 1881 and 1883, we were building the Canadian Pacific Railway. So we started out east and we kept going until we got to Vancouver, and that's where it stopped. Now, at that time, they couldn't find enough Canadian men who were willing to labor. It was hard work. It was going to be 3 years away from their family. They had to live in tents and cook their own food while they did it. So nobody was all that interested. So the Canadian government allowed 15,000 Chinese men to come over and labor during that time. And they were given all the most difficult jobs to do. The Chinese guys were paid $1 a day. The Canadians were paid $2. The Chinese were expected to buy their own food and their supplies, and the Canadians were given the food and supplies. So it was really quite bad, quite discriminatory. So when they got to British Columbia, they were, of course, tunneling through the mountains, and blasting was going on. About 600 of them lost their lives over that 3-year period of time. So when they got to Vancouver, it was all finished. They were allowed to either stay or go home as they pleased. None of them had earned enough money for their passage back to China, so they were trapped here. And if you're gonna be stuck in Canada in the middle of winter homeless, one of the only places you can do that, survive, is out in Vancouver or in Victoria. So Vancouver was kind of, a lot of activity. They weren't really welcome there. So they came to Victoria. Now I told you that Johnson Street was the edge of Victoria at that time. So on this side, there was like a ravine, and then on this side, this was literally just mud. So this is where they came. There was no water, no sewage, no electricity. They set up their tents here and they camped out trying to survive. Now, some of them were great gamblers, and they also had opium dens. And so some of them made a little bit of money that way and started to bring their families in. Their families were allowed to immigrate here to join them. Canadians became alarmed, thinking that was going to cause economic or cultural difficulties. And so the Canadian government imposed a $50 per person head tax on anybody immigrating to Canada only of Chinese origin.